Hey everyone! Welcome to a brand new portrait drawing lesson. My name is hamedelshal, and this is my channel hamedelshal. Today, I'm going to walk you through the Loomis method for drawing portraits, step by step. We'll break it down together, starting from the basic head construction all the way to understanding proportions and facial features. So stay sharp, grab your pencil and sketchbook, and follow along carefully, because we're about to dive deep into one of the most powerful methods for drawing accurate and realistic portraits. Let's get started. To start with, I didn't draw a sphere, I drew a circle on paper. Why? Because when you look at a real sphere from any front-facing or slightly tilted angle, it appears as a circle. So, this 2D circle on paper represents the upper part of the head. Next, I looked carefully at the reference photo. I noticed the center line of the face is slightly tilted and placed right in the middle of the circle, because the head is facing forward but slightly looking up. So I drew a vertical center line, gently tilted to match the pose. Then, I added the brow line, which is perpendicular to the center line and crosses the circle horizontally. But since the head is tilted upwards, I gave this brow line a slight curve upward to follow the spherical surface. Remember, this is a ball, so lines need to curve with the form. From there, I went downward to find the nose line. I divided the bottom half of the circle and placed the nose about halfway down from the brow line. This helps guide the center of the face. I also mirrored that same distance upward from the brow line to locate the hairline. At this point, we have the basic Loomis thirds, from the hairline to the brow, from the brow to the bottom of the nose, and from the nose to the chin. Now, the head in the reference isn't turned left or right, it's facing forward. So it was easy to divide the head into equal thirds on both sides, using vertical guides for the side planes, the slices. To build the chin, I measured the same distance from the nose to the brow downward again, and that gave me the estimated length for the chin. But I noticed something important. In this reference, the chin looked longer than expected. Why? Because the face is tilted upward. When the head tilts up, the space from the nose to the chin appears longer, especially if the mouth is open. So I adjusted accordingly. Then, I connected the bottom of the chin back up to the edges of the circle. These are the jawlines. I made sure the lines were angled correctly on both sides, forming a solid structure. The trick is to curve those jawlines gently toward the point where they meet the side of the circle. That's the natural rotation point of the head. Once I had that structure, I did a quick block in for the mouth. I just estimated it by eye, checking the arc and direction of the lips again. Because the head is tilted up, the mouth follows that same arc. That step also helped confirm the shape of the chin. And now, we've actually just finished the most difficult part of the drawing. If you mess this part up, the whole proportion of the face can look off, too long or too short. Next, I extended the jawlines upward from the chin, carefully following the slice lines on both sides. These lines flow up toward the hairline. Notice, I didn't draw them right. Next to the slice, I moved a small distance inward. Why? Because those slices mark the end of the brow, so the sides of the face start slightly inside that line. Then I moved on to the hairline and forehead. On the right side, the hair drops down and overlaps part of the eyebrow, exactly as seen in the reference. Next, I moved on to place the eyeline. I placed it in the upper third of the space between the brow line and the nose. To be accurate, I used my pencil to measure the distance and double-checked it with the reference. Accuracy here really matters because even a small shift in the eyes can throw off the whole likeness. Once I had that in place, I moved on to drawing the neck. I looked carefully at the reference. On the right side, I noticed the neck started almost in line with the outer edge of the eye. So, I marked that point and pulled a soft line downward to define the neck. On the left, I saw that the neck curves more inward, and that's because the neck is tilted, just like the head, following the original tilt we established with the center line. That subtle tilt makes the pose more dynamic and helps keep the figure believable. Now it was time to sketch the hair. I started with the right half, beginning from the center of the head outward. I drew it just a small distance away from the circle, remembering to keep the lines light and flowy. While doing this, I paid close attention to both the width and height of the hair. Every stroke was informed by the reference. I didn't rush it. When I moved to the left side, I repeated the same steps, building the form. slowly and carefully to match the silhouette and rhythm of the hair in the photo. As I continued downward with the hair, I also started defining the upper part of the torso. One thing I noticed was that the left shoulder is slightly raised compared to the right. That's key. So, I drew a guideline along the slope of the shoulders, using a slight upward angle on the left to match the reference. This not only helped me get the gesture of the pose right, but also anchored the head naturally on the body. I completed the hair sections that overlapped with the shoulders, making sure the flow of the lines was consistent. Then, I turned my attention to the ears. In this drawing, only the left ear is visible, so I started from the bottom of the nose line and extended outward to build the shape of the ear based on where it naturally aligns with the side of the head. It's a small detail, but important for getting the proportions right. After that, I stepped back a little and started refining the outer lines, the outline of the hair, the edges of the ear, and the silhouette of the clothing. I was careful with the shape of the neck and collar. A crucial detail here. I paid close attention to the space between the bottom of the chin and the collar. If that distance is too long, the neck will look unnatural and stretched. So I kept the spacing tight and proportional, just like in the reference. Lastly, I did a few quick adjustments to the hair, softening some shapes, sharpening others, and continued cleaning up the lines of the clothing. Then I did a quick comparison between my drawing and the reference, checking everything I'd built so far. The construction, the balance of the pose, the overall proportions. And that's it for this part. The hardest construction work is now behind us. Now we're ready to move into one of the most exciting and delicate stages, defining the features of the face, starting with the nose, then the eyes, and finally the mouth. To define the width of the nose, I placed 2 dots, slightly to the right and left of the center line. The distance between the center and each dot is equal, because the nose sits directly in the middle of the face. From those dots, I drew 2 vertical lines going upward, parallel to the center line. These lines guide us to where the eyes will be. Remember, the distance between the 2 eyes is roughly the same as the width of the nose. From the side of each of those lines, I drew a slight curve outward that leads up into the brow ridge, since the brow sits higher than the eyes. Then I began drawing the eyebrows. Starting with the one on the right, I used light, straight strokes, so I can easily adjust or erase them during shading later. I went over to the left brow, which helps me capture the expression of the girl I'm drawing, making sure its starting point aligns with the other brow, but in the reference, I noticed it was slightly raised, which helps me capture the expression of the girl I'm drawing. I returned to the light guidelines I previously drew for the mouth, the middle line of the lips. The line between upper and lower lips usually sits at about 1/4 of the distance up from the chin. Using that, I defined the rest of the mouth's vertical space. I paid close attention to the distance between the bottom lip and the chin, to ensure that the lips don't float too high or too low. Everything has to feel structurally placed. Once everything was aligned, I finalized the construction of the nose. I began at the nose line, leaving a small space to draw the right nostril, slightly lifted in the center, because the head is tilted upwards. From there, I added the right wing of the nose. Using the reference to carefully follow its curve and thickness, I kept the right edge of the nose line soft and light. Because a darker line here could make the nose appear flat or stylized, I mirrored the nostril shape to the left side, keeping the same width, but adapting the form based on the reference. Both nostrils may have equal size, but they appear slightly different depending on the lighting and angle. Then I added a subtle shadow along the cartilage division in the nose, which helped to create a more realistic 3D form. I completed the shape of the front cartilage with a smooth curve, and from there, I placed the highlight area to suggest light hitting the nose. From the nose, I measured the eye placement by marking to small dots for their widths. It's important to remember, the eyes are slightly narrower than the width of the nose. Once I had one eye's width, I copied that measurement to place the second eye, keeping everything symmetrical, since the face is facing us directly even though it's tilted up. Right eye. I drew the right eye starting at the guideline rising from the nose. The tear duct landed in the middle of the eye line, and the bottom eyelid sat very close to the guideline. I avoided curving it too far down, which would distort the natural shape. Looking at the right edge of the eye, I noticed it lifts slightly upward, due to the natural curvature of the face as it rotates. I drew the upper eyelid with more vertical height than the bottom, and I spaced it carefully from the eyebrow. Then I thickened both lids slightly, especially the top one, to leave room for drawing eyelashes later. Next, I added the shadow lines. The bottom lid had a lighter shadow. The top lid had a darker line, like a soft stroke to represent both depth and lash shadow. Left eye. I moved to the left eye, making sure it aligned perfectly with the guide dots. Like the right one, I slightly lifted the outer corner to keep the symmetry. I drew the bottom lid first, close to the guideline, and gave it thickness. Then moved on to the top lid, which starts tighter near the tear duct and expands outward a little. I also added the shadow lines under and above this eye, adjusting the spacing and angles carefully. Then I moved to draw eyelashes, just with very faint, curved strokes, because I'll refine them more during shading. I made sure the lash on the top curved like a fishing hook, and the lower lashes are softer and straighter. I placed the irises closer to the inner side of each eye, not perfectly centered, because the eyes are looking slightly to the side. In the right eye, I started from the tear duct and drew outward. In the left eye, I did the opposite, starting from the outer edge and curving inward. To mirror the direction, I also made sure to leave a tiny space below the iris for the whites of the eyes, and slightly compressed their width, because the iris appears narrower when it's not facing you directly. Now back to the lips. Using the previous construction lines, I started shaping the upper lip, focusing on the upward curve near the center. Then I marked the lip width, using light vertical lines that descend from the edges of the nose. This helps place the corners of the mouth accurately. Next, I drew the center line of the lips. Then build out the upper lip by drawing two curves, each one moving outward slightly and curving downward into the corner points. Then I created the lower lip, with a rounder and fuller curve than the top, keeping proportions in mind. And with that, we've completed the full portrait using the Loomis method step by step, from the very first circle to the final facial features. Now here's what I really want you to take away from this lesson. The most important thing, whether you're drawing this portrait or any other, is to focus on the structure. What I showed you in this video isn't just a process to copy. It's a foundation that applies to every face, in any angle, under any lighting. Each line we placed has a reason. Each step builds on the one before it. And that's exactly how you get accurate proportions and confident drawings. I know some of these steps might feel complex at first, but the more you study anatomy and understand head construction, the easier it becomes. It's not about drawing a perfect face from memory. It's about understanding how to build it properly every time. Keep your eyes on the big head-shaped mask before diving into small details. That's where most people go wrong. They focus on features too early, before locking in the form. Everything we did today was based on that mindset. We started with a circle because it represents the top of the skull. We added center lines to track tilt and direction. And we used those guides to place the brow, the nose, the lips, the eyes. That's the power of Loomis. It teaches you to construct, not just copy. So if you really want to improve at portrait drawing, go back and practice the structure again and again. Draw it from different angles. Try simplifying photos. Observe real faces. The more you train your eye to see the structure, the more your drawings will feel natural and believable. Before you go, if you found this helpful, please support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and turning on notifications. That way, you won't miss any upcoming tutorials. You can also follow me here and on my other platforms where I post more step-by-step guides and reference images. And if you want to share your drawings with me, check the links in the description. I'd love to see your progress. My name is hamedelshal, and this channel is all about teaching you the right way to draw portraits from the ground up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Keep practicing and never stop drawing.